And let's get our energy really moving. I'm going to get everybody to get on your feet and give a warm welcome to the Mother Superior, Sandy Gallagher.
Well, what a morning, huh? What'd you guys think of that lesson? How many felt it was pretty heady stuff? Deep stuff, huh? You know, Bob said he suggested you take that laminated summary and carry it with you and maybe read it with a buddy and discuss it. And the funny thing is, when you do something like that and you do it repeatedly over time, even 30 days or 60 days, it's like an onion you're peeling away and it starts to mean more and more to you. So I'd really encourage you to do that. Now, we're going to be talking about a chapter, the lesson's called Is Opportunity Monopolized? And as Bob said, that's on page 45 of the workbook. We're going to work through the workbook, but I kind of want to set the stage for this because I want you to really open your mind to what we just learned this morning, how you can get in your way with that. So this really is an example of how you could be stopping that whole creative process from happening in your life the way you want it to. You know how we started last night? We talked about lifestyle desires. Remember the 3 lifestyle desires that we talked about? How would you love to have no financial concerns whatsoever? I mean, doesn't that sound awesome? Yeah, come on, a little more enthusiasm. Yeah, what was the second one? What was the second one? How would you like to wake up every day and be enthused about what you're doing? I mean, seriously. And how many believe you can do that? How many are starting to feel that's less pie in the sky? How about you streamers? Do you believe that can happen for you? I mean, literally be enthused. You know, do a mental exercise maybe later tonight where you just sort of lay down, get in a really relaxed state. Just tell your body to relax and pretend like you just fell asleep and you're waking up. You didn't set the alarm and you're getting up in the morning, no alarm, nothing that you have to do. What would you do? And really feel how that feels inside of you. Being enthused about everything you do every day. And then what was the third one? People you hang out with. How much have you enjoyed hanging out with each other? Isn't it awesome? And we're only into day 2. We're not even at the lunch break. And these days, it's like one day is like a month in the scheme of how much everybody's growing. These are the people you're going to surround yourself with all the time. Isn't that awesome? The more you become the kind of person you want to be around, the more people you want to be around, you're going to attract to you. So these are the lifestyle desires, and what do we have to do to get that? Why don't we have that? Why don't we have that? And it's because of that demon inside, that paradigm, that mental programming that was put inside us before we even knew what was going on. And it's this program that is just controlling us if we're not aware. Remember the yellow dot? We got to expand our awareness. So I'll give you an example of how this can play out. And I want you to think about yourself and how it might be playing out in your life. So just get relaxed for a minute. I want you, even if you want to close your eyes or just go inward, and I want you to get a real clear picture in your mind. And think of yourself the youngest age you can remember yourself. What's the youngest you can remember yourself? 3 years old? Maybe 4 years old? And that's little you. And now you see a little girl, same age. And this little girl idolizes her daddy. And her daddy is a banking lawyer. And he's a hard worker. And he works so hard, he's going to school at night, he's working for the government during the day. He's got 4 kids at home, and she just idolizes him. So really see this little girl. And she announces she's going to be a banking lawyer, just like her dad. And so then she goes through, and as she's getting older, she's going to be a banking lawyer just like her dad. And she sees her dad out. He can do no wrong. And so she goes on and she gets all these accolades, things that make her dad happy, you know. Goes on, studies in Europe, and then goes on to law school, gets various degrees. And I want you to think about this. You know, she's loving getting these rewards, but a lot of it is for, show daddy, look what I'm doing. Can you relate to this in your life, and anywhere in your life? So she's going through, and she graduates top of her law class, gets the American Jurisprudence Award in banking law, offers from law firms, Wall Street, Los Angeles, pick wherever she wanted. And she goes on, practices, builds a good practice, and then she goes and practices with her dad. So she's on Wall Street for 10 years, then goes to practice with her dad. They create a successful practice together. And then she goes to a seminar in August 2006, and this tall, white-haired guy walks out on stage and starts saying these things that light up something in her, and just like, it's like a bucket of ice water is poured on her. Are you living the life you really want to live? Is there something more for you? Why were you brought here? What is your purpose in being here? And really getting in touch with that. And then the voice saying, but you're just a lawyer. How can you do that? Oh my gosh, he's so good. How can anybody be that good? He's so good. Nobody else can be in this market. And that team he has is so amazing. What could you ever offer to that team? Really, really picture that and see how it relates to you. And then just sort of open up your eyes if you closed your eyes and just come back here. And of course, that little girl is me. And we all still have that little person in us. And that paradigm was battling. The paradigm was saying, who do you think you are? How could you do that? And it wants to just shut it down. What does it mean to have opportunity monopolized? What does that mean, opportunity monopolized? This example is an example of how we can have it in every area of our life. It's any time we start to think something isn't possible for us, whether it be getting something, a physical item that we want, or being somebody we want to be. That's an example. It's any time we think about lack and limitation. It's any time we think about competition versus creativity and working together. And so I was having that whole battle inside my head. Now, if I had asked anyone at my table, if I had told them, remember, I wrote in teeny tiny print what I wanted. I slammed the book shut. I didn't want anybody to see it. What would have happened if I had shared that with my table? Would they have had the same chatter going on in their head? Well, who does she think she is? She doesn't have any skills to do that. I mean, is she, because we created in our own mind. Opportunity is never, ever, ever monopolized unless we create it for ourselves. We have to create it for ourselves. Because what did Bob say last night? He said, opportunity can never be monopolized because it's about giving. And so I listened to him. I love when Phil Goldfine gets up on stage. He's so great. He's like, I don't understand it, but it's freaking awesome, And it's like, it's so true. And Bob was saying, and he's shaking my head all up. I could not have explained to you that first night probably a single thing he said with any degree of intelligence. But he said, do what I say, unless and until you believe I don't know what I'm talking about. Or I'm lying to you, and I don't lie, and I do know what I'm talking about. And he shared his example, and he shared examples of clients. Like last night, this morning, you see physical, tangible examples of what we're talking about. And if you go back home, like I tried to do, and explain this, you can't do it to the people who aren't ready for it. So don't even try. Just understand. You may not understand it, but it works. Wallace Wattles says that in his book. He says, right at the beginning, I'm not writing a treatise. Because as a lawyer, I'm like, where's the precedence? which authorities are you citing? You know, what holes can I punch in this? And he says right up front, I'm not trying to tell you all the reasons why this works. I'm telling you it works. I did it by experience. Now go out and try it. And then when you get the results, you're not going to care about anybody else's limitations or holes that they're poking in it. So I was listening to Bob, and I said, okay, I'm going to do this. And so then he started really talking about how does this work? And he brought up this slide, and he says, we live on 3 planes. There's the spiritual, the intellectual, and the physical. And he said something I love. He said, we're spiritual beings, and spirit is always for expansion and fuller expression. When he said that, that was the Friday night of the seminar, and I thought, oh my God, there's nothing wrong with me. Because I remember the nun smacking me on my hand in grade school with the ruler. Sandra, are you ever going to be happy? Is it ever enough? And that's so deeply ingrained, I honestly thought I was flawed. Because I wanted more. I wanted to do more. I wanted to be more. I wanted to have more. And I was ashamed of it. And he's saying that is the spiritual part of you, who you are. And so watch, you know, he says spiritual, intellectual, physical. Now the intellectual, and Bob's going to go into much more detail. The intellectual is how we tap into the spiritual plane. Let me back that up for a sec. The intellectual, that's when we tap into our intellectual faculties. That's when we go from the physical of who we think we are through our body, through us being here, through everything in our environment, and we tap into that no thing. Now, right now, you're doing this. Spirit's all around us, and you are tapping into it, and what are you doing? It's not shaped. There is no shape to it. And there's all kinds of ideas and thoughts out there, and we can grab them, we can shape them any way we want. And what the paradigm does is, without us even knowing it, it's like a filter, and it funnels it, and it only allows in what is in harmony with the paradigm, unless we are consciously aware of what is going on. So Bob's up there, and he's saying this, and like, well, what do you want, Tony? What do you really want? And he's like, I'm just getting so jazzed, and I wrote it down, and I'm going to do this, and I've got the idea how I'm going to do it. Thinking into results. 12 modules. I designed it for companies, just like Bob Taylor's company. Designed it for companies, but it's now all over. Individuals are using it, entrepreneurs are using it. But I had the idea, thinking into results. In my mind, I started designing it and the graphics, and Bob didn't even know who I was, but he got me so jazzed about this idea. And he's saying, if you do this, and if you do certain things in a certain way, with the emphasis on certain way, it has to result in your life. It has to manifest in your life. So Sunday night, I'm so excited, and I'm like, I'm going to keep studying. And my sister, Sandy Gallagher, I think she's outside. She works in customer service. She heads up our customer service. And she didn't know any of this information. But the seminar's over. I'm like, how am I going to keep this going? I got to keep this enthusiasm. I got to keep the good thoughts inside. And so I grabbed Kathy, and we drove to my condo in Sun Valley. It's about a 10-hour drive. Listened to Born Rich the whole way. And Kathy, you know, the first hour, she's okay with it. By hour 10, we get to the condo. She's like, can we listen to some music, you know? And I said, no, I got DVDs. And she's like, oh. And we watched DVDs for something like 3 days. And then didn't go do anything, you know. And then we drive back another 9-10 hours listening to the CDs, and I'm just feeding my mind and feeding my mind. And then we had a family get-together in Lake Curlew, Washington, Northeast Washington. The whole Gallagher gang. And they're sitting there, and I'm in my cabin just writing out a day in my new life. And, you know, just journaling as if. This is a day as if. And I'm really getting into this. And I walk out of the cabin, and I go out there, and I've got 3 brothers, 2 sisters, mom, dad, cousins, grandparents. Guess what I'm going to do? And I start to tell them, and I grew up Catholic. And there's a lot of paradigm conditioning goes with that. And my brothers, they didn't say anything. They just gave me that look like, what has she been smoking in there? But my dad, you know, and I love him to death. I just love him, and we're really, really close. Sandra, you don't need all that. And it's just like, all of a sudden, opportunity is monopolized. That is not an option for me anymore. I have to be a lawyer. How ridiculous in my 40s to give up my law practice and all that work and all that effort and those clients that I built over all that time. And what about the 401k and the profit sharing and, you know, being an equity partner? It's like a tenured professor. They can't kick you out, you know, and it's like, are you crazy? And just started diluting the dream. Opportunity was monopolized in my mind. And even though this process is going on, and I was becoming aware that this was the truth, but the paradigm was winning. The paradigm was winning. And I'm not stupid, you know? I knew what was going on. But you gotta be tough. You gotta be prepared to battle it. And I don't care how successful you are. We get Phil on the stage with his Oscar. He's now going to accomplish a feat that no one has tried, and I know he's gonna do it. But he keeps growing. He keeps going for more. That's what it's all about. But that paradigm is gonna tell you lack. It's gonna tell you limitation. It's going to tell you opportunity is monopolized. And this is what we're up against. And so we have to keep going for more. Here's a great example in the business world. You know, you've got a company, and this circle is your company, okay? And one portion here, this is your company. This is Bob's company. This is Tony's, Keith's company, Wendy's company. Right here is yours. And then you've got a colleague that is right next to you with another company, okay? And so you guys are holding on to your piece, you're focused on your piece, you're growing your piece, and then all of a sudden get the idea, wait a minute, maybe we can share. So you've got your piece of the pie, let's call Bill the other company. Bill's got a piece of the pie. What are we programmed to believe in this scenario? What? That you what?
There's only so much pie.
Only so much pie. So what happens if Bill gives me part of his piece of the pie? He's going to feel like he's getting less. How many times have you seen this in the business world? All the time. I was working on a merger of equals of two community banks right before this seminar in 2006. I will never forget this. It makes me very sad because it was two regional banks that were very well respected in the community. They were an important part of the community. And my client wanted to do what's called a merger of equals. Merger of equals is where you take the best of this one and the best of this one, you bring it together. And we had the deal inked. We were in the boardroom. It was all packed with all the directors and executive officers. Everything's signed. We had completely signed. And we get a call, like there was a regulatory reason for getting the deal signed that day. And we get a call right before the final minute of getting this signed. And Bill, in this scenario, whose bank was 100 years old, his family had started it, carried it on through the family, he saw this piece of pie that he was giving up. And he didn't want to give it up. He couldn't see the big picture. What's the big picture? It's that there's an abundance. There's an abundance, and we can expand, we can create, we can build more. We can do this in any area of our life. So what happens if we expand the pie? Well, then both Bill and I get a bigger piece. But he didn't see that. He was, in his mind, in his strong, strong paradigm, he was giving up a piece. And he just couldn't see what could happen. And then what happened in the economy? The economy started to have challenges. People started defaulting on loans. Real estate values dropped. Loans started defaulting. And the regulators came in and shut the bank. They shut Bill's bank down. Been there 100 years. If he had not let that paradigm stand in his way, they could have created a bigger piece of the pie. We want to think about abundance. Abundance, this is from the Upanishads. From abundance, he took abundance, and still abundance remains. Now, that sounds like a bit of a paradox. How can you take something, all of it, and then it still remains? Like, there's oxygen in this room. Take a deep breath. Just take as much as you want. Take all that you want. Now hold your breath. Okay, let it go before you turn red. You took abundance. You took all there was, and yet there's still plenty to go around. We don't have to see it. We don't have to see it for it to be here. Bob mentioned what the work we do with the Unstoppable Foundation, and beautiful Cynthia Kersey right over here. And, you know, we were at the gala which is coming up this March. It was 2 years ago. And this is such a great example because we were giving at what, to me, felt like a really stretch. We were giving what I thought was a lot. And right before the event started, I heard something Bob said, and I read a sign or something, and it gave me the idea, let's double up. Wouldn't that be cool if we doubled up? And I didn't stop to think about the impact of that. I just said, let's double up. And then I get called up on stage, and I'm like, oh, so exciting. I can tell Cynthia. I said, we're going to double up. We're going to do this every week. And she was like, what a great way to start the night. And then the next morning when I go to start looking at the financials, I'm like, what have I done? Oh my, how am I gonna do that? I mean, it was big. And I wasn't thinking from abundance, he took abundance and still abundance remained. I was thinking, how much is in the bank account? What has to go out? And how am I gonna do that? And I decided, okay, I can learn a lesson here. And so I decided, I'm gonna send this payment first, before I pay anybody else, every Friday morning. I didn't have to do it every week. I could have done it once a month, I could have done it once a year, but I decided Friday morning, first thing, this is the payment that's going out. Everything else follows. And I did that. And like Bob said, our company has just expanded. And I firmly believe that it's because of the work, in great part, we do with the Unstoppable Foundation. Bob talked about do more, be more, have more, and give more. It completes the cycle. So this lesson, it's an example of how you can get stopped in your tracks, but it's also an example that you can just totally raise your awareness of what is possible for you and really fuel yourself up to fight that paradigm, to do the battle until it just dies for lack of nourishment and you move on.